Sometimes I think it's best if the circumstances and logistics can work out correctly. If they're doing campus visits, maybe let them do the first one on their own, particularly if it's somewhere where they can go remote and don't have to drive and you feel it's safe. And then if you like it, you go back subsequently and check on it yourself. I think campus visits are just critical at this point in time. We've got to be doing campus visits, and even when you go someplace and don't like it, we have to walk away making a list of what we didn't like about it, so that when we go to the next campus, we're better prepared to know what it is that we're looking for. I just can't stress campus visits, the importance of that. Dr. New and I both, I think, have had a very fair sort of a lenience about understanding that students have a life beyond Lausanne. And we've never had a problem with any students really taking advantage of that. So we haven't placed a particular cap on the number of days you can miss. I think you also are working with a faculty who are flexible and who know it's going to take some catch-up. Get some follow-up done when you get back, make up for any homework that was missed, examinations, but that's really necessary. All the better if you can kill a couple of birds with one stone. You know, when you're looking at Carleton College in the Twin Cities, hit McAllister and St. Olaf while you're there. Just some ideas there. So try to let your student take ownership as much as you possibly can. Ask constructive questions. Try to be objective. Some of these things, man, I've seen some knock-down, drag-out fights in families about this. Some discussions over the dinner table that were just flat out unsavory. And I'm sorry about that. It really shouldn't be that way. This, as odd as it may sound, this really, it can be fun. It can be fun. I've asked you to listen and to your students, and I think they will value that. And when it comes time, I always think about when I'm working with your children, I have a sort of a metaphorical well that I'm drawing from every time I open my mouth to say something. And so I try to make more deposits than I do withdrawals. And I think that because I do more listening than I do talking when I'm in interviews with students, when I do have something to offer, I hope that they take it with some degree of value. And so, also you've got to talk realistically about financials. I have a feeling that from the standpoint of need-based and merit-based financial aid, things are not going to improve this year. And I'm talking about across the country, institutionally. Most colleges and universities lost somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of their endowment. If they got lucky, it was 1/4. If they fell somewhere in between, it was 1/3. One of the top line items, usually the top line item in any operating budget for a college or university, is institutional aid. Those are going to be hacked all across the country. And so you're going to see aid fractions, which is the percentage that parents are expected to pay out of pocket. I think you're going to see that go up. Probably need to be prepared to see that. It's just going to be a fact. There is some information later in this handout relative to financial aid, and we'll get back to that. Point C, we've got some information here. There's a glossary on the second page, which is really rather elementary, but I think it's necessary. There's some things, maybe some phrases or words there that you're not familiar with. Many colleges and universities are doing away with the early decision, that is the binding deadline. Harvard did away with early decision, thinking that it just places too much pressure on students. I don't really have a formed opinion about it. I do know this with certainty. If you don't have an institution that you're absolutely in love with, then you don't belong doing early decision. If you'd like to talk to me about that some more, certainly I'd be glad to make an appointment and do that. So basically you can be admitted, denied, deferred, or waitlisted. Deferral basically means that the college wants more information. They may write you a letter and say, we'd like to have an additional letter of recommendation. We would like to see you take the ACT one more time. We would like to hold off on making the decision until we see your next quarter grades. That's deferral. Many students are placed on a wait list. You know, when I worked in admissions, we went to the wait list every year. It's a rather, it's sort of an arrogant thing, I think, for a college to say, we don't really want you, but in case we need you, we're going to go ahead and put you sort of here in purgatory. So hang out there, and if we need you, we'll come back and get you. It just is what it is. But if you're really interested in that college, I think it's worth sticking around. Okay, so we've got on the second page there those terms that may help you. I've given you some websites to reference in the third page. Really, regardless of where you're at relative to income, it is in your interest to fill out the FAFSA. Be very careful. Write this down. Don't fill it out at FAFSA.com. The correct website is FAFSA.ed.gov. FAFSA.com is I don't know how it's legal, frankly, but they charge you a fee, $65 or $70, to help you fill out the free application for federal student aid. But understand this, and here's one of the reasons why it's important for you to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the gateway to Hope dollars. And you never know what's going to happen. You may think you're sending your child to Florida or California, and that's fine. That may happen. But if something should change, if for some odd reason he or she ends up staying in Tennessee, you're going to want that free money. So between January 1st and March 1st, I believe it is, you're going to fill out the FAFSA. You're going to use returns from 2008 because you're not going to have return from 2009 yet. So if you've had a dramatic swing in income, for good or for bad, it's not going to be a very good estimate. They're just making an estimate for financial aid based on 2008 returns. If you're in sales, for example, where you're commissioned and you make $250,000 one year and $100,000 the next, it's not going to be very reliable.
I thought they wanted your most recent tax returns, like what they were legally put out.
If it's available, then I'm sure they'll consider it. But most people, when they file the FAFSA, returns are not available between January 1 and March 1. They're just not. So they're making an estimate based on 2008. And they will recalculate when 2009 comes back around using the 2009 returns. I think most of you probably know, I heard something very interesting the other day from a Harvard rep that they do not take into consideration home equity or retirement assets. And I thought that phrase, retirement assets, is pretty broad. But that is meaning something that's specifically tied to your place of work. And it varies from institution to institution whether they will take home equity and or retirement assets into account. So be familiar with FAFSA. Be prepared to fill it out. I think it's to your advantage. If your child is applying to private schools, Elon, Rhodes, Sewanee, you're probably going to be asked to fill, you might want to write this down, the CSS profile. That is through College Board. So you can find the CSS profile on collegeboard.com. It is a tool that's like the FAFSA, but different than the FAFSA. I think it costs $35 to fill out the CSS profile. I'm going to ask you for similar information, but it's something that's specific to private schools.